go live. So Maria, we thought we would just have you walk through the bill with us.
One of the Maria Royal with Legislative Council. And we did start to do that last week. We made a couple of attempts, and last week I passed out a section by section summary that looks like this, and I do have some extra copies today if anybody wants one. So whatever is easiest for you. And I thought we could kind of continue going through that and then toggle to the language to the extent you want to look at the specific language, which is 139. I have been listening to the testimony, and I understand the committee has some concerns, and I realize the decisions will be made on how you want to proceed.
Right.
But in terms of where we got, just a really brief recap, we went over some of the findings, and I know you've heard more testimony, so I think you understand a little bit better about some of the funding problems and disparities in service throughout the state and some of the challenges. When we last spoke, we talked about proposal in the bill to basically expand the capacity of the existing 911 board to take on dispatching. That's their proposal in the bill. And that expanded board would take effect in July of next year. And we talked about what exactly its authority with respect to not just 911 call taking, but dispatching. We've reviewed quickly the funding formula. I know there's some questions about that. And just to recap though, that formula, the collection of money and the distribution of money would not happen until 2027. Just so you know that. I understand you still have concerns. And then what we didn't really get to, and maybe what we'll go through today, is the work that would begin upon passage of this bill were it to pass, which is largely delegated to the existing 911 board in its current organization. Right, so if we want to just work off of the summary, you can look on page 6. So section 4 is this transition process, which commences immediately. So again, it's the 911 board, current composition that would initiate the process. When the new board is created, if we were to do that, the new board next year would continue and take over this transition process, which would take a few years, okay? So there would be a new special fund created, the Public Safety Communications Transition Fund, and into that fund would go the $11 million.
That's the grants that were supposed to be given out. 3 of them were, but not, I guess the check, they were awarded, but the checks weren't sent.
Right.
So they've taken back that 11 million.
Well, it's on hold.
It's on
nothing's
hold, but
happened.
so there's no new appropriation in here. There's a repurposing.
Correct.
So this is the only state money that's going in. Once this is up and running, is there any state financial obligation to the dispatch services?
So, no, as this is drafted now, the funding for dispatching at statewide all comes from that formula, which is assessed on municipalities' property taxes essentially. So
That's the crux of it.
correct. And this doesn't talk about other funding sources, or I
I
understand that
think
you.
it said you go for grants or something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a provision that says into the fund will go any fees
Yeah.
collected, any appropriations, but nothing is
So the state
specifically,
is not committing to putting
there's
any.
no commitment that they'll be responsible for any portion of in this legislation. So in terms of the advisory committee that would be established this summer or upon passage to advise the 911 board, you'll see that there are 17 members. And we'll just quickly read through them. They include the Commissioner of Public Safety or designee, another representative from the Department of Public Safety that's appointed by the Commissioner, Secretary of Digital Services or designee, the Commissioner of Public Service or designee, a representative from a telecommunications provider appointed by the Commissioner of Public Service, the Director of Emergency Preparedness, Response, and Injury Prevention, which is within the Department of Health, the Chair of the Regional Dispatch Working Group, and that was Paul White, who we heard from yesterday. Then it has one member with relevant expertise appointed by the board, so the 911 board could choose a member. One member appointed by Vermont Care Partners with expertise in emergency mental health services. 2 firefighters, one appointed by Vermont Career Fire Chiefs and one appointed by the Vermont Fire Chiefs Association. 1 municipal law enforcement officer appointed by the Vermont Association of Chiefs of Police. 1 basically EMS provider appointed by the Vermont State Ambulance Association. 2 professional dispatchers, 1 appointed by a municipal dispatch center. You may want to be a little more specific there so there's no confusion, but and 1 also appointed by the Vermont State Employees Association.
Okay, so
And 2 municipal officers appointed by VLCT that represent different geographic areas of the state and different areas with different population density.
I am not, and I think this is the crux of the problem. Are any of these people that are going to be running the dispatch centers going to be state employees? Are we saying that all the dispatchers will be state employees? And if they aren't, then why is the VSEA?
Well, some of the dispatchers are state employees. I don't know how many, and I don't know that how that would change. I think
Okay,
that's
but
to
we're-
be determined, maybe. I don't,
I'm just seeing that, you know, we've got 2 dispatchers and the state employees work at the 911 centers. They are not out in,
the state-run PSAPs.
yes, the PSAPs.
Williston and Westminster.
But they are turning over those duties. They're not going to be doing dispatch. So I'm just wondering, if we aren't hiring in this process any new VSEA members, if we aren't anticipating that, why they're on there, just a question.
Sure. No, I think it's a good question. That specifically wasn't addressed, about whether they should or should not be
Right.
state employees, and so.
I mean, we're trying to set this up. And this is a huge and impressive board. But I see 2 municipal officers. I see 1 municipal dispatcher and 1 VSEA member. And then we've got chiefs of police and fire associates. I'm not sure they represent. The concern is very few representatives of the people that are paying the bills making decisions. And I think,
Whatever they might be.
yeah, I mean, and I think that's, and I think what we've heard, and I haven't seen so far, is there's no budget. There's no estimate about how much all of this is going to cost. There's no, as far as the towns are concerned, these folks could decide this is the ideal system, and oh, by the way, we're going to add 20 cents to your property tax rate. And I think that's where we're getting the pushback. And I'm trying to figure out how we can get those numbers. And then the towns, or give the towns some feeling that they have control over the destiny. Roger Marcoux has an interesting model. They're setting up a municipal union district in the Chittenden County area. And this bill goes all to one big dome with a lot of professionals on it. But other than the two municipal officers, I think that's the concern, that there is no lever that the towns have. The towns don't have a vote. The towns just get a bill. And I think that's the concern I'm hearing. I'm looking at the committee to see if somebody's hearing anything different. I think that's, I think I'm not sure what to do with this. We don't have a dollar figure. I mean,
So one thing, and it might help just to read through a little bit more
okay,
of this, not that it will get you the exact answers, but in terms of the process for determining some of the unanswered questions. If you look under the transition process, there are essentially three phases. There's data collection, there's design, and implementation. They don't necessarily happen one after the other. There's maybe some overlap, but a lot of what I think you're talking about, Senator Cummings, is under data collection, really doing the inventory of the existing infrastructure, all of the equipment, the number of existing dispatch personnel, both full and part-time, the point of contact at each dispatch center that is responsible for coordination and oversight, and then determine the total spending on dispatch services, including state and municipal appropriations and fees. So that's where you're trying to get a handle on what are we spending statewide currently.
Okay.
So again, this is all data collection that the 911 board, with the assistance of this new advisory committee, would be charged with ascertaining. And then also mapping the wireless communication dead zones in the state, looking at existing mapping efforts in the state to arrive at accurate data, doing a community needs assessment with the assistance of the Vermont League of Cities and Towns to determine gaps in dispatch services and any significant challenges to the delivery of dispatch services. So this is the data that was contemplated, at least in Senate GovOps, is important. We need to know before we really start designing a system.
I think that's step one. And we should do that before we design a system. What we've done is we've designed a system and then said before it goes into effect, we're going to collect the data. And I think if we collected the data first and then came back with a cost estimate and a structure, I think the towns might be more comfortable. We do solid waste districts that the towns pay for. We do fire districts that the towns contribute to, where there's a fee for. We do CUDs. And at least the Lamoille County has a board and representatives. I think Washington County may, because when one of the people complained about the fee increase, they were told it was approved by the board on which he sat. So, but I'm looking committee thoughts on how do we do this, or do we make the towns buy in some more?
Buy into something that hasn't been decided yet.
Well, yeah, buy into finding a solution to doing dispatch.
Oh, but
Right now, they are not bought in.
wouldn't that be the grants?
What grants?
Well, wouldn't there be some seed money to design what later we're gonna have to make a decision on who's gonna pay to maintain and pay for the whole system when it's up and running?
Yeah. Well, right now, there's a formula that is in there,
Well, that's,
but basically it is the towns that are going to pay for it, but they don't know what it is.
well, one of them's premature for 2027, if you don't know what you're buying. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the question, and it sounds like and I haven't had a chance to read last year's report. And I was gonna try to do that tonight, but my grandson's playing in a band concert, so that's what I'm going tonight. You're all welcome, Montpelier High School. It's in multiple bands and multiple age groups.
I've paid those dues.
It's better than your fourth time through rhythm band in kindergarten.
This is not John Phillips, who's an actor.
I'm not sure what it is, but I'm not gonna be reading that report tonight. But I wanna make this work. It needs to move forward. The state police are gonna pull out. And history says that these are hard decisions, and a lot of our constituents aren't going to be happy if we make them, or when we make them, no matter what we do. Some of people are going to be unhappy, but that if we don't do something, something bad will happen, and that will give us the impetus, or the towns the impetus to do something. I've seen it happen too often. And so I'd like to move this forward, but I don't feel like I've got the information to do that.
We are very aware that time is running out, and we've got a deadline coming in just a few weeks. But we do have a few weeks. What information should we be gathering rather than just?
I don't know that we can gather it. I think it needs to be gathered. And I've already been told, no, we can't do another brand study. There is $11 million that's, and I want to hear from the towns that got it or thought they were going to get it. I know Montpelier wants me to give them their $2 million. And I've told them I don't have that authority. But I think we ought to hear from the towns that had that money taken away from them after it had been awarded. I don't know, but there is $11 million in play. It's one-time money. That is the only state money that's envisioned in this. So, is there more?
was.
Well, there's a $1 million general fund appropriation for new positions
Okay, but that's,
under the 911 board.
The new
That's
positions
if you
in the
decide to move
okay.
forward with the 911 board.
and how we're doing that, 911 was $10 million in the hole in the universal service fund.
1.1,
That's right.
1.3, and then they're asked a little bit more for system upgrades. So in the House budget, it's 2.1 million
Is going to the board.
right now under the House proposal.
Okay, so they're giving the board more stuff.
This bill would,
Right.
in preparation for the board taking on these great responsibilities, they would be hiring new staff, about
But
8
it's-
employees.
Okay, but it's not contributing anything to buying equipment. It talks about setting standards for equipment, we want interoperable, but there's no cost share kind of thing going on with buying equipment.
We're gonna have a list of the equipment that needs to be bought, which might provide some
Yeah.
clues as to how it would be paid.
Which is what the transition thing does. It inventories the infrastructure and equipment that's out there. And I think it ought to inventory and evaluate as to age, interconnectability, how soon it's likely to need to be replaced, and who owns it. If it was bought with the tax dollars of town X, who has power over that?
That has to be in the design of the governance structure.
Yeah.
Which needs to be in place before you start for collecting monies.
So so a couple of things, just on the design, that some of that work would start immediately. Where they actually try to come up with the technical and operational standards that would ensure an interoperable and resilient statewide public safety communication system. They look at the technology life cycle standards that should be applied to ensure that there are upgrades as necessary, security, cybersecurity, continuity of operations, so all of what you would want in a system so that it functions, is interoperable and resilient and all those things. So in terms of, and then related to that, you probably need a cost estimate to design the system that you want, what you think. In terms of municipalities going forward, as you know, some municipalities get their services for free from the state-run PSAPs. What this proposal envisions is that the new 911 board, the new public safety board, would come up with a mechanism by rule for approving new regional dispatch centers and ensuring that every municipality is a member of. So that's still kind of to be
Still there.
determined, but that's the process that they.
But what happens? You've got municipalities who have put a lot of time, money, and effort and years into setting up a dispatch system. They need to know they're going to be continued, I think. And it doesn't look like we've got some overlap.
Well, I've heard those concerns too, and those are some of the policy decisions. As you know, in the intent section, there's a statement of design the system, try not to disrupt the good services that are being provided, right? And then in terms of what a regional dispatch center is, going forward, the definition, it includes any center that's in existence on the effective date of this act that's approved by the board. That's, you know,
Well, I guess,
be more
but see,
specifically.
that's part of the question. I have a dispatch center, I've been dispatching for 10 years or 20. And, but my equipment's old, because my people won't buy me new equipment. And I'm there. How do I know the board is going to approve me as a regional dispatch?
Go back to the equipment that's already been purchased and installed. One of the things you would start out with is the inventory, what's out there, and assess its value. So when you get down to who's gonna pay, who's gonna own, and the planning process, you have some municipalities that already have built and owned and have invested money. That would be a credit to those municipalities that they're not obliged to come up with that money. They get a credit for having already come up with it. But you've got to, once you've done that, you have to say going forward, what are the obligations of those folks that haven't been owned anything, and sort of been phoning in. And that's the time to come up with a funding and disbursement plan by 2027. You don't start off with that, you find out you end up with that closer to 2027.
Okay, we have data collection. In the bill, who's doing the data collection?
911 board, which would have additional staff, up to 8 new classified positions, and advised by the new advisory committee. So there is,
It's worked on the assumption, though, that first we're setting up this big oversight and
premise on the
advisory.
assumption that the 911 board is the correct entity to do this, because they will be the supervising authority now. If you're not ready to make that policy decision, that might change who does this
I'm not,
data collection.
I think 911 definitely has a role in this. They have been doing it. I feel like I may be a little premature to setting up a 17-person board, which is not necessarily a functional number. Or is that just the advisory?
That's just the advisory,
Okay,
and
so
there is
how
a
large
sunset.
board?
So the board itself, and again, the new numbers would come on next July, so in a year, has 12 members. The existing board is 9.
Okay,
So it would increase to 12 members. And if you want to compare the membership, that's on page 2 of the summary, 2 and 3,
that's manageable,
right? And so again, that would be next year.
except that it's an even number. So, but I guess to make this work, we need to build relationships and develop trust, which I'm not sensing the towns have right now. I'm comfortable with, and I'm gonna talk with Barb Neal to make sure she's comfortable with having the board overdo it. And if they can hire additional staff, and the staff can do the inventory and the appraisal and the location of the existing dispatch centers and the towns they cover, then we should know a schedule for buying and replacing equipment. We should also know if that equipment is compatible with other equipment, if it meets modern standards. And when we know that, and we know employees and salaries and benefits, that's another issue. Are we going to charge the people in the Northeast Kingdom? Just, it's all going in a bucket and they're paying minimum wage to their high school kid they got dispatching. And they're gonna have to share the cost of somebody getting Chittenden County wages, but there will be a disparity in cost.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understood. So I think you said you're comfortable with the 911 board initiating this process.
I am, I don't know. if
Are you also
it-
comfortable with the 911 board's expanded jurisdiction? Are you, so that they would ultimately have oversight and management? And I'm only asking that because the appropriation for 1 million is for 8 permanent classified positions. And if you're not sure,
I'm not sure.
or you might
Right.
want to pay for consultants, grants,
once
whatever.
we do the initial, I mean, we need to do the assessment. What's out there? What do we lack? You know, if we've got 10 dispatch centers, but 8 of them can't talk to each other, if they can all talk to each other, then that's fine. What do we have? How old is the equipment? When's it gonna need to be replaced? How many staff do they have? What's their pay level? My gut says that we're going to need some statewide, 911 is probably the best. We can't get public safety. They're doing this, they're doing at least the call centers, they've got some expertise, they've got equipment. But I think we're going to have to find a meaningful way for the towns to feel they have some say, some control over their costs. That no matter how good that big board is, it's Big Brother telling you you're putting 10 cents on your property tax and that's it, we're assessing you a bill. Towns didn't like it or don't like it, I'm still assuming, when they get a bill from the county government to run the courts, because they don't have any say in that. So that's what I'm thinking, but I think before, yesterday we heard several times, we need to establish a runway. You know, you need to just start moving this behemoth down the runway, and at regular intervals, there's a check back to make sure that it's going fast enough so when it gets to the end, it's gonna fly. Otherwise, it's gonna crash. And to me, the first marker on that runway should be an estimate of the cost. I may be wrong, I'm looking at the folks, Senator Bray.
Estimated costs, and I'm wondering about, we talked about the ongoing costs or maintenance, so that's, we don't fund a large initial project. It's not, my sense is it's going to be expensive. It's just a lot of equipment across a lot of agencies. Even those who are already operating aren't necessarily operating with the same equipment. But I hope that we can, I know there's a distribution formula and stuff like that in here. I'm wondering what this first decision also needs to have in mind. What are the carrying costs to
Yeah.
maintain?
Well, yeah, and under carrying costs, there's equipment replacement or initial purchasing. There's salaries, there's staffing, there's a building. somebody's donating room. And
Well, I didn't imagine, maybe it's not, we don't need to worry about exactly how municipalities are gonna do this, but I could imagine some of the municipalities decided it's a big ticket item and they would bond for it or something.
I don't know how they've done it. I don't remember a bond for stuff in Montpelier. I think maybe you buy it pieces.
As you know,
We did it, some elected.
You did bond?
1.7 million for some of that radio equipment.
Yes, and there's towers and antennas.
Sounds like what if we have a mechanism for having credit for having purchased
Okay.
equipment towards the overall plan. We got state grants to buy it. Would be treated. They haven't paid for it, but they got state grants and the formula for that.
And that would be, does the board eventually own all the equipment? Here,
Some will eventually
Yay.
own the equipment.
some of them, yeah.
That would have to be.
So I mean, the first thing we need to know is what's out there, who owns it, who paid for it? What's its condition and what's its interoperability? Plus staffing and rooms. And I'd like to just see a map where there's uncovered areas. And that, I think they said, it's in the back of the report, I think.
I think Senator Watson's map, that interactive map,
Yeah,
she had also showed,
it was confusing. But, and maybe it's just dividing it up into 4 smaller maps so that you can get more detail in, because sometimes, I know when we were doing ambulance, Moortown, which is right down here over 3 Mile Bridge, was 3 minutes from Montpelier for an ambulance call, but they were already paying Mad River Valley, which is the other side of Warren and probably 20 minutes from Moortown. And that's life or death if you're having a heart attack. But they would have to pay 2 separate fees, and it didn't work. So geography, that's who gets dispatched. But who does the dispatching? And it should be regional. You should know your back roads. You should know where the mud is so thick today, you can't get a truck through there, and how to get around it. We don't have any public works people on here. They're kind of, okay. Enough, gotta talk to Senator Hardy. But I want to do this right. If this fails, it'll be 10 years. And probably something bad will happen before we'll have the intestinal fortitude to take it up again. I personally think a CUD model, hub and spokes.
Are there other states that have tackled this before we did?
Are there?
Models that,
I think that's been looked at, I don't, off the top of my head, I'm not familiar enough with how other states.
anyone could give us a list of a couple places to look at that have already.
Massachusetts and Maine are 2 good examples.
All right, Maine's probably the closest to being like us. So maybe we'll look at their dispatch system. But before we can do anything, we need to know what we have and what we need.
We have a 2-year session, it's a biennial.
Yes. I would like to get this out of here this year,
This year, not this session,
this
Not this.
session.
not this biennial. Because what I'm saying is,
I would like to get it out of here before we go home in May, if we go home in May.
And even
So
if it's
they-
only an inventory or a list of things that we have that we lack.
And then next year, if the House sends that out, we can start working once we get the inventory back.
What about a step above a study? That we empower someone, charge someone with actually coming up with the program, giving us, it's up to us to vote it in or not, but that.
Yeah, no, well, I think we did some study last year. We charged GovOps to do something. They have given us their best effort.
But it's not a complete program.
No,
Oh,
it's a big model. And unfortunately, because of the top-down, nobody can tell us what it's going to cost. You haven't got the support of the towns to do it. And so, and it's around the funding, it's around who pays. And I'm trying to just figure out a way that we can get the towns to buy in to being involved and have some ownership in this idea. And maybe we just charge them with doing the dispatch, the inventory. What have you got? What have you got for space? Do you have any potential bigger space? How many employees? What's their average salary or salary range? And get a lay of the land that's out there. And then tell them. So maybe next, yeah. I'll talk to Barney, I'll see what she thinks. Just ask her to think about how we might step this so that by the time we get back here next year, we will have information based on which to build.
Having the inventory is pretty often like the first step in planning a major project or whatever it is. If you don't know what you have, you don't know what you don't know in particular what is most cost effective to capitalize on. And you also, it's hard to see the gap between where you are and where you'd like to go.
So the next question is, does anybody have any of that information? It's possible. It's there. Which would City of Montpelier or the City of Middlebury knows how much dispatch equipment they've purchased. I don't know if they know how they know who they can talk to in their area, but I don't know if they know if they can talk to Brattleboro and mine to the rescue squad on Mount Snow. Okay. Sausage making in its process. Oh, Maria had her hands up. Maybe she can enlighten
Well,
us.
just along those lines, there's one thing I was just thinking about. As part of this proposal for any approved dispatch centers, one of the provisions asks each center to submit a 5-year dispatch plan, which looks at its projected operational budgets, its technology needs. But anyway, it sounds very similar to what you're asking for right now.
Yeah.
So however you decide to go forward, incorporating at least that in collection of that information from the existing centers may help. Anyway, and that's just summarized on page 4 of the summary, if you just wanted to see.
Right. So are you saying like, in terms of developing guidelines for what the inventory shall include? That cover these bases that you're suggesting?
Yeah, and because you were also talking about what are the technology life cycle plans, like, you know,
Yeah.
this is information, they're projected operational budgets, this is information that could be helpful for getting a better, more accurate picture of the costs going forward. It's
Yes.
not complete, because it's not looking at the whole,
No,
whatever the new design standards are, and whether their projections are based
Yeah.
on equipment purchases or technology that would be consistent with it. So I'm just saying, this seemed like information that I think Senator Bray was looking to have.
before
So
you gotta know how much lumber and nails you've got on hand if you're gonna build something before you figure out how much you're gonna have to buy. And that might be a good way. It's the approved centers. Why
this
would we
proposal-
not approve the centers we've got?
Right. So there is,
Where the missing gaps? Oh, okay.
And then we figure out, I haven't heard that we have too much dispatch.
right, and that was one thing in Senate DevOps, they recognized there needed to be a process, and they were not prepared to spell it out in statute. So they had the board in rule designing that process for approving new centers or existing centers. So I think some of it's probably a commitment to meeting those technology standards, providing service. Anyway.
But
it's
we've
to be
gotta
determined.
get the town buy-in, otherwise we're just pushing a boulder up a hill. And they'll roll back on us every chance they get. They've gotta be equal partners in this. I mean, at some point, somebody's gonna say yes or no. But we've gotta get their buy-in, and this would be just collecting data is a good way to get some buy-in, working together. So McCormick.
When I was a freshman in college, I figured out that anytime you don't know the answer to the essay question, write an essay about the question. Analyze the question. Okay? And I do that at legislative forums as well, and I get through. We don't know, we have a lot of questions that we don't know the answers to. So let's look at the questions, because I wonder if the question isn't simple and we're making it out to be. We know that for all the complexity and all the frustration and all the inefficiencies, a lot of the state is covered that if you call 911, someone will pick up and they will know where to send you, okay? I think one of the questions we need to ask is, in all of this mess out there, what is already working and probably doesn't need to be fixed? The next question, where are the mysteries? How does it happen? You get the horror stories. I called 911 and they sent them to the wrong place because they weren't
I
familiar
can
with my
see
town.
the ambulance and they want the street
Yeah,
number.
yeah.
I don't know the street number, but the ambulance is right there.
Right, so what are the problems there? Because there, it can be somewhat more easily fixed, namely that you've got existing call centers already. They should then all figure out, no matter where you get a call from, who do you send it to? Okay, and can that not be done largely with, and then the third question I would ask is, after you've done all that, where do you still have black holes?
The immediate problem, I think we can find out where we have black holes. There are a number of communities, Maria, some reason 16 strikes in my head. But there are communities who call 911. probably because they were located near the state police barracks. I know that Waterbury was getting dispatch services from the state police. I don't know if they still are, but they did for years. Now when you call 911, the state police are saying, we're not dispatching. Because they can't get the personnel. There has been a real crisis. And I guess it was one of the joint fiscal meetings, one of the witnesses said, my daughter, this was over the holidays, it was probably the November. He said, my daughter's calling in sick because if she goes in, they're so short-staffed, she won't get out for 2 days. And that's, they are very short-staffed. Everybody is short-staffed. It's a high-stress job. The state police have been saying, I'll bet you for a decade or more, that they are not in the business of dispatching fire trucks. They have all they can do to provide police service to half the state. So those towns need a dispatching center. Those towns, somebody yesterday said, some towns have been paying a lot and they've been getting a lot. They get good dispatch, good New County. I guess it was South, Jesse Baker. Some towns have been paying nothing and getting a lot. And that's your issue. And some towns aren't paying and aren't getting. But it's the towns that have not been paying that need to find dispatch services, that replacement to the state police. And I don't know if this is overkill.
I think Fullwood said about 30 towns pay nothing right now and receive dispatching from state-run PSAPs. And the state-run PSAPs handle about 70% of all 911 calls and dispatch to about 70 or 80 response agencies. So that just gives you
What they
the
want
volume
to
of
do is
what they're doing.
they don't dispatch Montpelier Fire Department or PD. They want to just forward that email to the Central Vermont Dispatch Center, whoever it is. I think it's Montpelier, but it might be Barry because they keep switching. They want to just send that forward and let the regional dispatch center that knows your fire trucks knows, yeah, that's in Berlin, but Riverton, there's a mountain. But yeah, so I need to dispatch this Riverton fire truck, not the Berlin fire truck. If you want to get scary, watch the Berlin fire trucks go through Montpelier to get from one side of town to the other, because that's the only way there's paved road. They want to have a regional dispatch center that calls the local fire, police, ambulance, fast squad, whatever is out there. Everybody seems to have a fire department. A lot have a fast squad. Police services, you get what you get with the state police, which means it may be 45 minutes to an hour or two before they get there, depending on where they are and what they're tied up with. Because we have more issues, and I'm sure we don't have more state police. We've been having trouble for years hiring.
Yes.
You looking for?
This is a dead zone.
We're dead zone. And we've got about 3 minutes till we are going to get a report on both technical education. It is a multi. So everybody think on this. I will talk to Barb Neal. I'm going to have to go talk to the chair of ops.
The towns,
Find
that-
out if there's any money around for summer study.
the towns that have been getting a free ride, I take it, are small towns that have been
Well,
using.
Perry isn't a small town and
It's
I,
not.
no, I'm not at all. The list is in the back of the study, which is on our webpage. I just haven't had a chance to go there. I'm not sure that they're all small and I'm not sure they're all in one, they're all located right around the Williston Barracks. It would be easy, but I don't think they are. Montpelier is dispatching for Walden while, I mean,
Yeah,
Somebody had a cousin that lived in one there.
or they got a better deal, and you can leave that there. I mean, you know, if we don't like Montpelier's price and service, we can go to Barry or, but we've got to give the town some feeling that they have some control over their destiny.
I thought 911, I haven't gone back, what, 30 years, I thought 911 was supposed to be, that when someone made the emergency call, the person getting the call would be able to know exactly where the problem was, where to send the help.
That's the theory. Now, if you remember 30 years ago, an awful lot of Vermonters didn't want the government knowing where they lived. Remember that one? I'm pretty sure
Remember.
that's why that board is,
I still hear from them.
I'm not telling the government where I live and they got me on their map. I'm pretty sure that's why they're a separate board and not under public safety, because they sure didn't want the cops knowing where they lived.
They
That
do-
was a
that is
landline.
part of
And that was a
the
landline.
system, is that they
Yeah.
know the location
Yeah,
of the caller. And then they have to know which,
That's why they needed the address.
yeah, I mean, I know the technology
Yeah.
exists.
Yeah, they needed the street number of the church where the lady had passed out in the basement.
Yeah.
You can look out and see the ambulance and the fire department. But this guy was probably in Williston.
Isn't that information? Last Saturday, I Googled the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic as sung to Pope Francis.
Okay.
And I got it in like 3 seconds.
All right.
The information was there and it was.
I just stop at Leonard
I
Cohen.
mean,
and
that
all.
was, Leonard,
Okay, we are being summoned to the report. Yes, we are. So we're going, it's coming in on the screen, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
so if anyone has a question, let me know and I will raise the hands and they'll call on this.
okay.
But
Anyway,
it's-
everyone should check out that.
but there's like 5